Truth. Kale stood among the strike team, armored in a matte black exosuit, too fresh to feel like his own. It adjusted to his body automatically, wrapping around his healing wounds like a second skin. The HUD blinked to life, highlighting targets, terrain, and friendly units. It was terrifyingly precise. Juno handed him a rifle. "Ya won't need to fire it probably, but keep it ready." "I've never shot anything before," he admitted. She raised an eyebrow. "That's all right. The first time you do, you'll know exactly why you had to." The dropship ride to the outskirts of the Citadel was silent. Everyone inside looked calm, too calm. Kyle could hear his own breath under the helmet. Ragged and sharp. Juno leaned in close and said, "We're ghosts. Kyle, they don't see us until it's too late." When the dropship landed, it didn't make a sound. Human tech didn't scream when it arrived. It whispered, it promised. The Citadel's outer defenses were already down, disabled by advanced hacker teams who'd infiltrated the grid hours before. No alarms, no defense turrets online, no reinforcements coming. Still, Kale expected resistance. Instead, they walked into a dead city. The inside of the Citadel was pristine, untouched by the chaos outside. Halls lined with banners of Feather's dominion. Walls engraved with the names of fallen heroes, slavers, killers, tyrants. The humans moved through it with grim efficiency, downloading archives, tagging data cores, disabling power grids. Every action calculated, no wasted time, no necessary cruelty. Kyle found himself alone in a chamber marked classified biology storage. The doors hissed open for him before anyone could stow them. Inside, cold blue lights illuminated rows upon rows of cylindrical chambers, hundreds of them. Cryo pods, some empty, some still occupied, and attached to each names, species, genetic records, breeding logs. He moved closer, heart-pounding redinglables. Subject 4321, a Half-Terran, conceived in mining colony 13. Resistance lineage confirmed. Status incompatible, rejected, discarded, killed. His stomach turned. These weren't records. They were atrophies. Kale. Juno's voice ran through the comms. "Fall back, we've Gotenbound armor. 3 Dominion tanks. West corridor. We need backup." He turned and ran, rifled tight in his grip. His legs screamed, still weak from recovery, but adrenaline carried him faster than he'd moved in his life. When he arrived, Juno's squad was pinned behind fallen pillars. The tanks were Threx-class siege walkers, heavy-plated dual cannons glowing. Kyle didn't think. He remembered how it felt to be chained, how his mother's screams echoed as they dragged her away. How the Overseer laughed as they whipped him. How no one came. Until now. He ducked low, spotting a fallen Dominion rocket launcher near a crushed guard. He sprinted into the open. Juno shouted, "Kale, no." Too late. He slid across the floor, grabbed the launcher, and rolled behind a slab of debris. His HUD locked onto the nearest tank, screaming warnings into his ears, but his hands moved on instinct. Click. Target lock, boom. The launcher kicked hard, the missile streaking through the smoke. It struck dead center. The tank exploded in a fiery bloom, throwing molten debris into the air. Kyle gasped, ears ringing, vision swimming. But hadn't stopped. He reloaded, fired again. A second tank went up, this one spinning sideways before crumpling to the floor in a heap of twisted metal. The third turned its guns toward him. He stared at death. He didn't flinch. Just before it fired, 2 precision shots rang out from above. Sniper fire. Human units had taken the upper levels. The final tank collapsed with a metallic groan. Its cannons never firing. Silence fell. Juno rushed over, gripping his shoulder. "That was insane," she said breathlessly. He coughed, smoke in his lungs. "Wasn't going to let them take anyone else." She stared at him differently now. Not like a rescued victim, not even like a soldier, but like one of them. "Get used to this feeling," she said. "What feeling?" "Fighting back and winning." And in that moment, with flames lighting the citadel behind him and the taste of gunpowder in his mouth, Kyle finally understood what it meant to be human. The citadel burned behind them, its once pristine walls now cracked and charred. Dominion flags fluttered weakly in the wind, stained with soot and ash. The truth buried deep in its vaults, data logs, breeding records, prisoner manifests, was now in human hands. But more than that, it was in Kale's hands. He'd seen it with his own eyes. Theproof, the numbers, the brutality disguised as bureaucracy. Back at the mobile base, Kale sat alone inside the debriefing tent, still gripping the scorched handle of the rocket launcher. They let him keep a symbol. They said, a memory. He wasn't sure if it was supposed to feel like pride or weight. Juno walked in, her armor stained and scratched, but her face unreadable. She dropped into the seat across from him. "You made the killing," she said. "2 tanks. That's more than some veterans." "I don't feel like a hero," Kale said quietly. "You're not one," she replied flatly. "You're a survivor. Heroes die. Survivors fight." He nodded slowly, that he could understand. General Vaughn arrived moments later. No salute, no formalities, just the quiet, powerful presence of a man who carried wars on his shoulders like they wear birthmarks. "We decoded most of the Citadel's archive." He said, "They've been targeting human blood hybrids specifically, not just enslaving them, erasing them." Kale already knew he didn't need the files. Vaughn continued. "They think our bloodline is dangerous, too unstable, too unpredictable. What they don't realize, what they never understood, is that it's those very things that make use unbreakable." Kyo looked up at him, voice hollow. "So what now? We exposed them. We hit them. Do we go back?" Vaughn leaned in, eyes sharp. "There's no going back. This wasn't a rescue mission. It was a declaration." He tapped a control pad, bringing up a hologram of the galaxy. Dots lit up in red across a dozen systems. "These are confirmed Dominion slave planets, labor camps, human blood detention facilities, generation outtesting centers. We're going to hit every one of them." Juno whistled low. "That's half the outer belt." "Correct," Vaughn said. "And when we're alone, there won't be a single place in the stars where they'll feel safe." Kyle swallowed hard. "You're not just a survivor anymore, Kale," the general said. "You're the spark that lit this fire. You don't get to walk away." For the first time in his life, Kale didn't want to. That night, a broadcast went out across the sector, encrypted, raw, and meant to be seen by the pressed, not the powerful. A short message with Kale's face front and center. "My name is Kale. I was born in chains. My mother was executed forfeiting back. My father died nameless in the mines. The Dominion thought I would break, that I'd disappear like Therist. But they forgot one thing." He looked directly into the lens. His eyes weren't afraid anymore. "I'm human, and we never stay down." The signal cut after 10 seconds. That was all it needed. On worlds hundreds of light years away, slaves paused their work. Beaten species whispered to each other through fences. And in the Dominion's high chambers, the message repeated one hacked screen. Not a threat, a promise. The stars had changed. Word of the uprising on Alpharan spread like plasma-throw circuitry, fast, searing, impossible to contain. The Thrust Dominion scrambled to patch their systems, bury the breach, spin the narrative. But it was too late. The fire was lit, and it wasn't burning quietly. On the prison world of Gorinth 7, enslaved workers refused to rise from their CS. On Muria Prime, a riot broke out after someone painted the words, "We are human. We are thunder," across the gates of the central processing plant. It was spreading like rebellion always did, not in speeches or banners, but in whispers and blood. Kyle stood in the hangar of the Vigilant Rain, Earth's flagship carrier now orbiting above Altherion. It was a floating fortress, all black steel and humming grav cores, bristling with weapons that could punch holes in moons. But it wasn't the firepower that shook him. It was the order, the rhythm, the way everyone moved like they were born to be here. Like this was home. He didn't speak much. Not after the broadcast. Juno said it was normal. You just sent half the galaxy into revolt. You're allowed to be overwhelmed. I didn't mean to become a symbol, he told her. No one ever does, she replied. His days now blurred together. Training drills, combat simulations, debriefs, tactical meetings. Varun insisted Kyle be part of the planning sessions, not as a figurehead, as a strategist. He understood the enemy from inside the cage. His mind, sharpened by years of survival, began to see weaknesses in the Dominion that even Earth's generals had missed. They built everything for control, he told the War Council. Even their architecture, one central core, everything radiating out. You hit the heart, the limbs die. You're talking about centralized failure points, one of the commanders noted. Kale nodded. The Dominion doesn't understand redundancy. They never needed it. No one's ever pushed them far enough to matter. Until now, Vaughn said, a rare smile creeping into his voice. The next target was already selected. Draxus 12, a mid-tier Dominion outpost with a vast hybrid experimentation center. Unlike Altherion, it was fortified. Armed to the teeth, the Dominion had learned. They expected thunder this time, and that's exactly what Earth brought. Kyle dropped into the atmosphere of Draxus 12. Inside a newer pod this time. Sleeker, faster, his name stenciled on the side in crimson letters. The team with him wasn't just Juno and Echo Division anymore. It was his squad now, Multiace's survivors. Fighters who believed not just in Earth, but in Kale. They called themselves the Shattered Line because every one of them had come from B. She looked at him hard. Then we haunt the hell out of them. The next mission was personal. They found the overseer from Altherion, Krell, the one who'd whipped Kyle bloody, who laughed as others suffered. He hadn't been killed in the initial siege. He'd fled. Hidden in a luxurious state on a protected Dominion planet called Veltrax Prime. High-class, rich, full of parties and silence. The kind of place that never smelled like war until now. Kyle didn't take a squad this time. Just Juno. No orders, no briefings, just war soldiers, and a name that needed to be erased. They dropped into Veltrax at night. No warning, no mercy. The estate was surrounded by syntheticardins and drones designed to keep discomfort away. But comfort was no defense against vengeance. Kyle stormed through the halls, taking down guards with silent shots, not for efficiency, but because he wanted Krell to hear it coming. He wanted that bastard to know he wasn't safe anymore. They found him hiding behind the wall of servants, trembling in a silk robe like the coward he was. "You can do this," he stammered, voice quivering. "I'm a high-ranking official. There are laws." Kyle leveled his rifle. "Your laws died with the first child you branded." He didn't pull the trigger. Not yet. Instead, he turned on his helmet cam and streamed the moment across EarthNet. "Let the galaxy see him." Kyle stepped closer. "Say my name." Krell blinked. "What? Say it." "Kyle," he muttered. Kyle lowered Theraful. "Good." Then he pulled a small device from his belt and activated it. A signal flare. Moments later, a human strike ship screamed through the sky above, pinpointing his position, and sent a single rail round through the roof. It didn't hit Kyle, it hit Krell. What was left of the Overseer wouldn't need burying. Juno looked at him. Why didn't he outshoot? Kyle's jaw was tight. Because he didn't deserve to die insolence. When they returned to the Vigilant Rain, no one asked questions that no one needed to. Kyle wasn't the scared half-blood boy in chains anymore. He was Thunder. And thunder was getting louder. The galaxy was no longer silent. Kyle stood at the edge of the command deck aboard the Vigilant Rain, staring out at the vast sweep of stars. He no longer looked like the beaten half-blood slave dragged through dust and chains. His armor gleamed in black and red. His voice carried in rooms at once ignorant as kind. His name, Kyle, echoed across systems, sometimes in reverence, sometimes in fear. Behind him, the War Council debated strategy for the final assault. Their target, the Dominion core world of Varnaxis Prime. Varnaxis wasn't like the outposts they had crushed. It wasn't a slave planet or a remote lab. It was the Dominion's pride, the jewel of their empire, the seat of their rulers. And it was untouched. No one had ever attacked it. No one had ever dared until now. Fleets assembled, Juno said, walking up beside him. 10 carriers, 16 dreadnoughts, 4,000 strike pods. Every species we liberated sent fighters, even the ones who swore neutrality. They're not fighting for Earth, Kyle said quietly. They're fighting for themselves. Juno smiled. And for you. He turned, eyes heavy. Don't say that. You don't have to like being a symbol, she said. But you can't run from it. You were the first spark. You gave us thunder. Let it roll, Kyle. He closed his eyes for a long breath. The kind of breath you take before everything changes. Then he said, let's finish this. The fleet moved like an eclipse, blotting out light, swallowing transmissions, swallowing hope. Varnaxis Prime shimmered below. A planet of polished glass towers, planetary defense rings, and orbital cannons big enough to carve moons in half. Dominion warships formed a tight shield wall above the planet's atmosphere. A final line that had never been breached. They waited, but Earth didn't wait anymore. Kyle led the charge. His pod fired from the Vigilant Rain in a silent blaze. Hundreds more followed. Ghost black, silent, death in every direction. The Dominion's defense grid screamed awake, launching countermeasures, but they were too late. Human eyes jammed their systems before their targeting locks could complete. Kale's pod burst through the upper atmosphere, trailing fire. Below him, the capital spire of Varnaxis gleamed. A 200-story palace, throne room at the peak, housing the 13 sovereigns of the Dominion, his target. Our blood built that tower, he thought. Let it fall with us watching. The pod smashed into the central plaza, crushing marble and gold. Kyle stepped out, rifle in hand, breathing fire. The Sovereign Guard met them with plasma halberds and high-frequency shields. For a moment, it was chaos. Bodies slammed against stone. Gunfire punched holes through towers, and the screams, gods. The screams rattled the air like music made of vengeance. Kyle fought like he had nothing left to lose, because in a way he didn't. Every blow he struck felt like payment. Every kill, a name he couldn't remember from the prisons and labs. Beside him, Juno moved with lethal grace. 2 short blades tearing through armored guards like paper. She took a cut across the leg, but didn't slow down, not even for a second. Forward! Kale shouted. We take the tower now. The shattered line pressed upward, level by level. At the 75th floor, they found a child, half-human, shaking behind a glass wall, eyes swollen from weeping. The Dominion had kept them as trophies, proof of control. Kyle broke the glass himself, lifting the child into his arms. You're safe, he whispered. You're going home. Where's home? The child asked. Kyle didn't answer. At the top of Thetower, the sovereigns waited in ceremonial armor, backs straight, ice cold. One stepped forward, tall and silver-scaled. Sovereign Velek, High Chancellor of the Threxes. So this is what you bring? He sneered. A mongrel army and fire? Earth is still a primitive dirt rock, hiding behind myths and guns. Kyle stepped forward, lowering his rifle. No, he said. Earth is memory, and memory doesn't he? You came to end the Dominion. Velik laughed. You've ended nothing, you've simply made us angry. Kyle pulled a small device from his belt, a data crystal. He inserted it into the Spire's mainframe. Within seconds, the entire planetary broadcast system flickered to life, showing footage from every liberated world. Labs, executions, children in chains. The truth uncensored, unavoidable, playing across every screen in the Dominion's empire. You ended yourselves, Kyle said. A roar came from below. Millions of freed slaves rioting in the streets. The tower shook as Dominion soldiers were overwhelmed, not by firepower, but by numbers, by rage, by history that refused to be buried. Velik lunged, too slow. Kale met him in the center of the throne room, fists first. He dropped his rifle. He didn't want a clean kill. He wanted it personal. The Sovereign struck him with a plasma dagger, slicing his shoulder. Kale drove a knee into his gut, then slammed him to the floor again and again until the white of his robe turned black. He stood over the body, chest heaving. Juno limped to his side, blood streaking her face. It's done. No, Kale said, barely breathing. It started. They didn't declare victory. There was no flag to raise, no anthem to play. Instead, they opened the gates. The tower was emptied floor by floor, prisoners and records released. The palace of slavers turned into a temple of truth. And then they burned it to the ground. The fire could be seen from orbit. A week later, Kyle stood aboard Vigilant Rain once more. Clean bandages wrapped his side. The medals they tried to give him, he refused. They sat in a drawer untouched. He watched new ships being constructed in the hangars. Ships not marked with Earth's colors, but with the new emblem, a broken chain ringed in stars. Vaughn joined him. Older, slower, but smiling for once. We're not an empire, the general said. We're a warning. Kyle nodded. Good, we could see a leader. Someone who understands what this fight really means. Kale looked at him. I'm not a politician. No, Vaughn agreed. You're something better. You're the reason they'll never forget. Kale didn't answer. He turned back to the stars. Somewhere out there, more still suffered. More waited. More whispered stories about a thunder Thetans came for them. He would make sure it kept coming because the truth was simple. Humanity wasn't perfect. It wasn't pure. But it remembered. It answered decals no one else would. And when it descended, it came like a storm. Not for conquest, but for reckoning. The skies above Altherian glowed eternal gold, a gentle warmth, calm and serene, yet carrying the weight of deceit. For ages, the world had lingered as a distant outpost at the Empire's edge, forgotten even by its masters. But beneath its radiant clouds and tender winds, shadows writhed unseen. The anguish of countless enslaved races echoed there. In hushed, broken voices they spoke of Earth, like a legend half-remembered. The humans will come, they whispered, battered and scarred. One day they will come. Elders passed down tales. Though forbidden, tales of a people birthed in turmoil, tempered by strife, and sharpened in flame, a people that would not bow, would not forget, and above all would not forgive. Merciless. They never forgave. Yet Earth had been silent for ages. No fleets, no signals, no spark of hope. That was the creed of the Threx's dominion. They mocked the myths, scoffing at humanity as extinct or worse, irrelevant. Earth remained untouched, not from reverence, but because none expected a corpse to bite. On the ragged rim of Sector 94, within the shattered bones of a once-free colony, Kyle, half Zarian, half human, lay bound in the dust, his back torn open from the lash. His crime, shielding a girl who had dropped her ration sphere. For that defiance, the Overseer had whipped until the ground ran red. He spat blood, his eyes burning with more than agony, a flicker, a remembrance. His mother's voice echoed, "If they break you, Kyle, remember who you are. You are my son, and my father was human." Earth was a place he had never seen, scarcely believed. Yet beneath Altherian's twin suns, something long dormant awoke. Anbay in the stars, far away, unseen. Through fractured wormholes and corroded trade routes, Earth felt it. Not words, but silence, the kind of silence that screams. For Earth never forgot its own. Not the stolen, not the enslaved, not the ones buried under tyrant rule. When the signal reached Luna Base's high command, it was little more than a ghost, a broken frequency riding an obsolete mining drone. But when the translation came, the chamber froze. One word, help. Within days, Earthan's word. Not with councils, not with speeches, with thunder. Vast dreadnoughts rose from the moon's shadow. Combat pods were armed by hands that carried old wounds. Pilots who had watched comrades fall to Dominion guns. Soldiers forged on tailies of shattered colonies. They bore no banners, only armor black as the void, marked with a single sigil carved in steel, branded on their shoulders, a red hand clenched tight. On Altherian, the overseer dragged Kyle's broken body toward the pit, laughing. "No one's coming for you," he sneered. "Your kind died with their pride." Kyle gave no answer. He didn't need to. Above them, the golden sky fractured like glass, splintering across even. Then came the sound. Not a scream, not thunder, but the crushing roar of gravity itself tearing open. They fell like storms. Black pods split the skies, igniting the firmament in a wrathful blaze. Anti-air cannons spat blindly, too slow, too arrogant. The first pod slammed into the camp's courtyard, flattening a Threx guard beneath its weight. Its hatch burst open, and out stepped the first human Kyle had ever seen, towering. Broad, eyes burning with fury carved across galaxies. He offered no words, no pose. He simply lifted his rifle and unleashed fire. Kyle, bloodied and broken, began to weep not from agony, but from something long dead, hope. Smoke choked the air as more pods tore down, shredding fortified walls like paper. Sirens screamed, a sound forgotten on Altherian for centuries. The Dominion had never imagined war here. Why would they? They ruled unchallenged. The soldier who came first moved like a shadow of death, precise, furious, merciful, only when earned. He hauled Kyle from the crimson dust, slung him onto his shoulder as if weightless. Kyle tried to speak, but the man's voice cut through, hard as iron. "You're safe now, brother." That word struck harder than any blast. It didn't matter that Kyle bore alien blood, or that he'd never seen Earth. To this soldier, he was kin. Chaos erupted through the camp, prisoners of force. The humans didn't come because they had to. They came because someone cried for help. And Earth answers crease with thunder. The golden skies of Altheron were no longer serene. Fires raged across the horizon, stir with smoke trails from falling Dominion crafts. It wasn't just a rescue anymore. It was retribution. Kyle watched the sky from Med transport as it sped toward a temporary evac base. His wounds burned, but his mind burned hotter with questions, with anger, with something he hadn't dared feel in years. Purpose. The human camp was nothing like the prison he had known. It wasn't luxurious. It was efficient, mobile, and heavily armed. It didn't smell like metal and blood. It smelled like oil, sweat, and life. Kyle stepped off the transport with a borrowed exosuit keeping his broken ribs from shifting. A young officer met him at the ramp. She was barely older than him, eyes like flint. Kyle, son of Tan, half Xerian, confirmed human lineage. "You're coming with me." Hef allowed without question. They passed rows of wounded Dominion guards, bound and silenced. No torture, no revenge killings. The humans weren't here to make a statement. They were here to finish something that had started long ago. You were listed as deceased in the Lost Colonies archive, the officer said as they walked. Your mother, a known resistance fighter, your father, Zarian slave miner, executed for defiance. You shouldn't be alive. I'm not sure I am, Kyle muttered. She stopped in front of a large black tent. You are now. Command wants to see you. Inside, it was dark and humming with hollow maps and encrypted screens. A tall man stood at the center, arms crossed behind his back. He turned it slowly, and Kale felt an unfamiliar sensation crawl up his spine. Respect, fear, awe. This man looked carved from war. Gray streaked his beard. Scars lined his face like a map of battles past. Kyle, he said, voice calm, but filled with something heavy. I'm General Royce Vaughn. Welcome home. Home. Kyle scoffed. I've never even seen Earth. Viren didn't flinch. You don't need to. Earth isn't just a planet. It's a bloodline, a memory, a promise. Kale blinked, his throat tightening. Why now? Why after all these years? Why come back? Vaughn stepped closer. Because the galaxy thought we were dead. Because they took our children. Because you cried out. I didn't send that signal. You didn't have to. Someone did. That's enough. Vaughn turned to a screen showing real-time footage of battles across Altheron. We're taking this planet back. Not just for humans, for every species dominion crushed under its boot. This isn't a mission. It's a reckoning. Kyle stared at the images. Ships falling. Soldiers pushing forward. Slaves cheering through fences as their captors were driven out. He saw himself in those faces. Every scar he carried. Every bruise. Every time he thought he was nothing. Maybe he wasn't. Why me? He asked quietly. I'm not a soldier. Not yet, Vaughn said. But you will be. That night, Kyle didn't sleep. The painkillers dulled his body, but his mind raced. He sat outside of command tent, staring at the stars, wondering which one was Earth, wondering what it was like to grow up free. He heard footsteps. The female officer from earlier sat down beside him. Name's Juno, she said. Squad leader, 3rd Echo Division. He nodded slowly. Kyle, you fought back, she said. Not many do. I didn't win. You're still alive. That counts. They sat in silence for a while. Then she added almost softly. Tomorrow we hit the Citadel. That's where they keep the archives, the records, the breeding logs, the proof. They tried to erase us from history. We're going to take it back. Kyle clenched his fists. At dawn, the humans moved like shadows across the scorched land. The Citadel loomed in the distance, black, angular, and towering, a monument to Dominion pride. It had stood untouched for generations, its walls holding not just command centers and weapons stockpiles, but something far more dangerous,